Hello everybody, welcome back. So we're in for another review, obviously. I do want to apologize again for not getting a whole lot up for Hauntober. Hauntober is one of my favorite times of year. However, I was having ongoing sinus issues. I had a trip to the Grand Canyon while suffering from sinus issues, and trying to recover from that was not super fun. But there's also the aspect that this year has been very strange. And it didn't feel like Hauntober. It didn't feel like Halloween time. It just felt weird. Everybody I know who's really into Halloween, people who like Halloween even more than I do, just felt like it was very strange this year, and nobody I knew really got into it. We all just kind of had this apathy towards Halloween, which is not the norm for me. Like, I'd be binge watching the Halloween series all for the entirety of the month of October if I were given half a chance. And yet this year I didn't even watch one of them. So hopefully next year will not be the case, and hopefully I can make up for lost time and do a little bit more next year, but no guarantees, because if there's anything I've learned, if I make guarantees, it never comes out right. So let's get into today's review, which I'm sure you know by now is probably an MC romance, because something between 70 to 90% of my reviews tend to be MC oriented. It just happens to be one of my favorite genres, and I can almost always find at least one book to read in that genre at any given time. So today's review is Walk Through Fire by Kristen Ashley. Let's see if I can get no, it's just not showing up well. That's what happens with Kindles. So this is not book 1 in the series. This is in fact book 4. My scattered-brained, ADD-riddled self, I very rarely read books in order unless the author specifies that you need to. If it says it could be read as a standalone, I run with that shit. You got no idea. So I am planning to do some of the other books in the series because they do seem really interested, and I did enjoy the style of writing from this author. So let's get into it. Trigger warnings for this book include kidnapping, assault, dubious consent. I don't know if you could call it PTSD, but it's definitely like massive depression going on from a horrible breakup that happened like decades ago, and also infertility issues. So if any of those are issues for you, I would definitely tread lightly. So for those of you that is not a deal breaker, let's get into it. This is the story of Millie and Logan, whose club name is High. He is a part of the Chaos MC. So the very opening chapter of the story is Millie going to Chipotle because she couldn't be bothered to go grocery shopping and cook. So apparently this is a relatively common occurrence for her. Pardon me. And she happens to see her ex High while she is at Chipotle. While she does not go up to talk to him, she does hear part of his conversation on the phone and comes to the conclusion that he is either divorced or in the process of divorcing and has 2 children. She really doesn't know how to handle the fact that she's run into him, and books it back out to her car, where she proceeds to call her sister to have her meet her at her home, because this kind of regressed the little bit of progress that she's made in the, I think, 15 or 20 years since they broke up. So at first you would think that the reason why Millie is upset is because High broke up with her. Color me surprised when we find out that she was the one who in fact broke up with him. And it was because she felt she couldn't give him something that he very much needed. So she thought it was necessary. But she's dealt with this regret that she lost the love of her life. And so she thinks this is a chance for her to maybe approach High, talk to him about what happened and why things went down the way they did. So if nothing else, they could have closure, or at best, possibly a second chance. High does not take this very well. This begins an ongoing back and forth for them that takes up about half of the book, where outside factors bring them together on a couple of occasions with horrendously bad outcomes, and Hai kind of forcing his way back into Millie's life, although he doesn't really want her back, or he wants her to believe that he doesn't want her back at least. And they keep hurting each other over and over and over again. And then eventually everything comes to light as to why she broke up with him the way she did, why she stayed away. We come to terms with some of the things that Hai did when they were apart. He became very reckless, part of why his club name is Hai. And then the second half of the story is really two main factors. One, them learning how to be in each other's lives again, integrating Millie into Hai's life with his two daughters. Newsflash, that does not go well. Because kids always have that fantasy of mom and dad getting back together. But then you also end up with a little bit more action from about halfway to the end, halfway through the story and beyond, where an enemy of the clubs from back a while ago comes in and starts bringing Millie into some of the conflict, which pisses everybody off because old ladies are supposed to be off limits for everybody, right? Right. So, and I don't want to give too much of the story away. I'm giving some of the highlights, but I'm not going in depth on stuff like what happens with the kids and whatnot. But it is a very well done story. So, Millie as a character, I thoroughly enjoy Millie. I think she's wonderful. The very beginning of the book, anyone who's been through a bad breakup or even just had the blues at any point for any length of time will commiserate with her, because it is very clear she's very depressed. She's never really made it out of her post-breakup depression and just kind of dwelled in it. She's very successful. It didn't keep her from building a life. She is a party wedding planner, does very well for herself, owns her own business, works from the studio, which is just outside her home. Beautiful home. And even though she's been miserable for the better part of 2 decades, she's still there for everybody who is important to her. She's been there for her sister and her niece and her nephew and her best friends and her parents and all this stuff. And the reason she stayed so sad was because she was staying away from the man she was utterly and completely in love with, because she didn't think she could give him what he wanted and needed. And she figured if only one of us could be happy, it may as well be him. Hai, of course, is a part of an MC. He was prospecting, or was he prospecting for the MC? I think they met when he was prospecting and he'd already gotten into the MC by the time they broke up. But she was in college. She was very much integrated in the club life. She was an old lady. She was very good at it. She loved members of the club. And everybody assumed they were going to get married. And so when Millie broke up with him, he was totally blindsided. And as I said before, he started getting a little reckless on things, and that's part of why his club name was Hai. I think he was already a little reckless, and it just got worse, because I think he already had his club name. Sorry, I've been binge reading like 5 different books at one time, so I'm a little out there. But he was very much blindsided, didn't know what to do. And then when she showed up at one of their rallies, that she knew that they had every year, was not terribly happy, treated her like garbage. And while you very much don't want to like him after the first interaction you see between the two of them in current day, after some of the flashback scenes, because there are flashbacks throughout the entirety of this book, you do kind of get an idea of why he is so upset and why he is so bitter. And then eventually, when he does realize what the truth was, when he does realize she always loved him and she wanted what was best for him, he doesn't just brush off everything bad that he did. He realizes he's going to have to earn her back. He realizes that he did some pretty mean-spirited, horrible things. But you do kind of root for him once he gets his head out of his backside. And the way they handle the subplot about integrating Millie into his life with his daughters and his ex-wife, who apparently they're on good terms, and Millie and the ex-wife end up liking each other kind of as friends, which is a good thing. The way they handled it actually was very realistic, I feel like. Hai has had all these years without the love of his life, and when he has his girls for his weekend, he's trying to integrate Millie as much as possible, and he's so happy that everything's going the way it is. He kind of pushes it a little too fast, and he has some not so great outcomes, and a little backlash from some of the kiddos involved. And it was very realistic. It wasn't anything that was too out there, like, this horrible child or, and it didn't just happen sweetly overnight. It was work, it was realistic, and it wasn't too extreme or too idyllic. I thought it was very reasonable and very much something that would happen in real life or could happen in real life. Even the abduction scene, I think pretty much most of, if not, the story is realistic. The characters are realistic. It makes sense. There's not a whole lot of suspending reality, aside from the fact that, it's fiction. It's very much a realistic story. The characters are well thought out. The story's well thought out. The backstory's fleshed out. And it just makes sense. It's really well written. Like, I don't know how many times I almost cried rereading this book. Like, even going in knowing what was going to happen, I still borderline was ready to start sobbing like halfway through the story. But yeah, characters are well written. Story's well written. Concepts are well thought out, makes total sense. And even with like all of the characters, like, and this is something I've said before, you'll run into with a lot of like series where the characters are all the same. The female main characters are the same. The male characters are all the same. And it's just, not to say stories can't be good, but it can get repetitive. And in this one, pretty much all of the characters, you'll have some that have similarities. You have that amongst friends, but they're very distinct characters and personalities, different quirks, different, taste in things. Very nice. Very, very nice. And I'm looking forward to reading book 1 in the series, which I've already downloaded. And hopefully it goes as well as this one did. So that said, I would definitely recommend this story for anyone who loves MC romance, second chance romance, single parent romance. I definitely think it would take off any of those. Any of those could be worked for your list, yes. So I hope you found this review helpful. If not, let me know in the comments down below what I could have done to improve it. And also let me know what you thought of this review, if it helped you to decide whether or not to read this book. Have a wonderful night or day. Take care, guys. Bye-bye.